Hi, my name's Craig Roberts and I'm a landscape photographer. That's me there. Watch, because I'm about to get a grad filter out the camera bag. Oh, that's odd. It's a polarizer. Anyway, I better shut up because I'm about to speak to camera. Well, it's long exposure time. Half taken here at the coast, half in the urban environment. Oh, word of warning though, there could be some cliches involved. Well, my first location is here at Fleetwood, where at Fleetwood Marshes you've got these fantastic abandoned boats, all derelict, all falling apart, but now that the tide is finally coming in, we've got some water surrounding them, which are going to make great subjects for a long exposure. Well, being a marsh, it's muddy as anything, so I've got the wellies on, but it's also very slippery, and I've already slipped up once, but luckily I didn't get that on camera because you didn't want to see that. No, you didn't want to see that. Well, I'll be using 3 extreme ND filters from Lee Filters, the little stopper, big stopper and the new super stopper. Here over on the coast, I think I'll probably be using the big stopper and the super stopper more, just so I can get some real blur and movement within the water and the clouds above. Well, the weather today is suitably cloudy, ideal for doing long exposures. Unfortunately though, there's no breeze in the air, so the movement in the cloud is absolutely minimal. I'm really going to have to extend this exposures to really capture any movement up there. So maybe just capturing a blurring in the water and just a little bit of movement in the sky rather than any dramatic streaking. So as per usual, I'm using my Olympus EP5, which is better at long exposures than my EM1, less noise generated in the output of the image. I don't have to cover the viewfinder up on this camera because it's an electronic viewfinder, unlike the optical ones on a digital SLR. And again, I'm using my live time or live bulb feature, exclusive to the Olympus cameras, but takes all the guesswork out of the exposure times, even though you can work it out by the little card you get with the filters or with an app. This one I can just watch it appear on screen with the histogram and then just cut off the time when it's the perfect exposure. So useful, this feature. The advantage of the new super stopper, the 15 stop filter, is that I don't have to combine filters as I did in my previous coastal long exposure shoot. Here I've got 15 stops of ND, whereas before I was using the big stopper and the little stopper to make a combination of around 16 stops. But it made putting a graduated filter on the front a little bit awkward. Here it's just 2 filters, the 15 stop and a grad filter in the 2 slots in the holder. Much easier to use. So as I expected on here, even with the super stopper in place, with an exposure around 4 to 5 minutes, no real movement in the sky, just a slight blurring, but beautiful reflections and softness in the water. That'll do for me. Now, luckily I've got space to move into. This is my exit from the coast here, because the tide is coming up to its max here. I was stood over there a few minutes ago doing the shot, but I've had to retreat back because I don't know what's happening underneath that water when the mud flats get wet. I don't want to be sinking down and ended up like one of these relics. Well, I'm at Crosby Beach this morning. These are the Anthony Gormley and Other Place statues. I have actually photographed these with a long exposure before, and I may have to use those as the examples in this video, purely because, as you can see, the tide is fully out at the moment, and I don't want to be on this beach at high tide. I want to be further down the coast to a subject that I haven't shot before. So what I'm going to do is to head out to some of the distant statues that are way out in the distance and see if I can just capture some of those just as the tide is starting to come in, and they'll be my examples here. As you can see, it's nice and cloudy at the moment, but it's meant to clear up this afternoon. Bright blue skies, which is obviously not ideal for long exposures, so probably have to adapt my technique for that. Probably start shooting with the super stopper, which should allow me to bring those shutter speeds down enough despite it being so bright, and allow me to get some water movement around the subject, even if there's no movement in the sky because there's no cloud. So I'm just going to head out to some of those distant statues, see if I can get 1 or 2 shots this morning, but otherwise I'll show you the ones I've done before. Well, I didn't have to travel out very far because that tide is coming super quick again. That's about 10 minutes from it being way out in the distance to up to these nearer statues. So I've had to retreat back, but I've been able to get some of these nearer statues while standing on the safe bit of beach. The shots I'm doing here are with the big stopper, which is allowing me exposure around 40 to 60 seconds, which is just enough to blur the water. There's not that much movement in the sky again, so just a slight blurring to the clouds. But because some of the statues are quite well out into the water now, I'm having to use a telephoto lens, and of course that's going to exaggerate any blurring through wind blowing the lens or the tripod sinking into the sand. So I've got to be very careful with these shots. So I don't really want to make it into multiple minutes where that exposure could be ruined by movement to the camera. But I'm getting a couple of shots here, so it's all good. Well, here I am, my second location today. This is New Brighton, and no, it's not the lighthouse, but it's just to the left of that. You can see it over there? What do you mean there's nothing there? Well, actually there is, actually, because it's underwater at the moment. You obviously can't see the sea defences at high tide, which it is now, so I'm a little bit late getting here, or a little bit early, whichever way you want to look at it. So we'll have to wait an hour or two for the tide to recede back, and hopefully it'll become visible again. Well, it's really cold around here. My lips are going numb. I can hardly talk properly at the moment. But anyway, whilst it is high tide, I think it would be a shame not to do a quick shot of the lighthouse whilst we're waiting. So what I'll do, I'll set up and do 3 identical shots of this lighthouse. One with each of the filters, one with the little stopper, one with the big stopper, one with the super stopper, just so you can see how the different exposure times compare on this one subject. oh well, the big stopper has come to an end. The holder fell off the end of the lens, smashed on the rock and shattered the filter. First time I've ever done that. I thought everybody else that did this with their big stoppers were careless, but looks like I've joined the club. Well, the tide has dropped enough now for me to see the sea defences here, so I've set up. Despite me dropping the big stopper, the light levels have also dropped, so I can go over to using the little stopper now, and that's given me long enough shutter speeds to do the shot here just by adjusting the ISO a touch and putting the aperture up another stop, so I can still do my shots. I'm kicking myself for dropping that filter though. Well, that's the coast done. I'll see you in the city. Well, I'm here in the urban environment now. This is Salford Quays, Manchester. So let's use these filters and see what kind of results we can get from here. Well, my first shot is going to be here at the Media City tram stop. I'm going to do a view, Media City in the background, but I want to add a splash of colour from the approaching tram. So I need a shutter speed around half a second. So I'm going to be using the Lee little stopper, 6 stops of ND, and that will get me some nice flash of yellow blur from the approaching tram. Well, next up is this really nice sculptured bridge that crosses over the canal from Media City. I'm going to try the big stopper here, get an exposure around 25 seconds, should be enough. That will blur the water, a little bit of movement in the sky. I'm going to use a 0.9 soft grad on the sky, just because the water is really quite dark down here. So I want to make sure I get enough exposure down there without burning out the sky. So 3 stop grad, that's going to look really nice. Well, I've moved over to the other side of the bridge now, but the exposure is quite different here. We're only getting around 10 seconds with that big stopper. So I put the ISO back to its base 200, and I'm going to try the super stopper here, the 15 stop. That should give me exposure of a couple of minutes, and I think it's going to get a nice streak in the cloud there, because that cloud is moving quite fast now. A couple of minutes exposure time. Well, my plan today is to use the little stopper to blur movement and people with around half a second exposure, just to add a bit of movement to the scene. Where I've got the water in the shot, I'll go for the 10 stop, blur that water, give it nice smooth, and just capture whatever movement I get in the cloud with a 30 second to 1 minute exposure. And then when I'm doing shots, it's only got the sky in the shot above the subject. That's why I use the super stopper, and hopefully get exposures between 2 and 4 minutes, really capture that movement in the sky where there's no water in the shot. Our next subject is the Imperial War Museum here at Salford. Nice structure, nice angles of the building all over the place. Sun's coming and going behind the clouds, so it's making exposures a little bit difficult to work out which filter to use, but I'm going to go with the super stopper here. At least the wind is blowing that cloud nicely across the sky. Now for this shot of the bridge, the big stopper is actually doing 2 jobs. First of all, it's allowing me to capture movement in the clouds above, but secondly, because there's people walking across the bridge, the long exposure means that they don't show up in the shot. and I get a people-free view. The only thing I've got to watch out for is movement on the bridge, because it bounces, and therefore I've got to stand just on the edge of the bridge where it's a bit more solid. My next view, I'm going to do a little bit of a panoramic across here, taking in the apartment, and using the big stopper to help blur the water, which will help with the stitching and hopefully get any bit of blurring in the sky as well. So a 15-second exposure with the big stopper, nice grad on the sky. Hopefully this is going to work out. Little stopper. Well, that's ND filters, coast and urban. Where are you going to use yours?
Just what is it that you want to do?